My name is Ramey Ko, and I'm from Austin, Texas. I am a municipal judge. I teach at the University of Texas, Hokum, and I also serve on the President Obama's Advisory Commission on Asian American Pacific Islanders. And most importantly, I'm speaking today because I'm also living with depression and anxiety. I think like most Asian Americans, I didn't really understand a lot about mental health growing up. It wasn't something we talked about in our family, and it wasn't something that was brought up or discussed around the dinner table, certainly. I think the only person I ever heard about when I was growing up that had mental illness was a cousin of my mom's. And all I really knew was that she had been institutionalized at some point when she was younger. She was never brought up in conversation, and the few times that her name ever came up, I could tell from the hushed tones and the tension in the air that it was certainly a source of shame and embarrassment for the family. And I knew, even as a kid, that it was something to sort of be secret and not talked about. Unfortunately, those types of attitudes are prevalent, I think, throughout our community and throughout our own family experience. So it wasn't a big shock or surprise that when I went off to college for the first time, I really wasn't prepared to even understand what it might be like to go through something like depression or to face issues with anxiety. Like a lot of Asian American students, I worked hard growing up, and in many ways I exemplified that model minority stereotype. I achieved, I was at the top of my class, got good grades, and I was fortunate enough to be able to get into a great school, and I went to Yale University as an undergrad. Unfortunately, once I got there, I wasn't ready or prepared to deal with a lot of the situations that I now understand were an underlying issue throughout my whole life. I had periods of time when I didn't understand why, but I couldn't get myself to get out of bed or walk out that door of my dorm room. And sometimes, literally weeks would go by where I didn't leave my room. And you would think from listening to that should send off some warning signs, but being someone who, again, had never really understood mental health my whole life, my only instinct was to think of myself as actually lazy. And instead of thinking that perhaps I should seek help or talk to somebody about it, I simply felt worse and would beat myself up for missing classes, not doing my homework, being antisocial, things that in my view, in my estimation, in my upbringing, I'd always been told were signs of failure, signs of inadequacy, signs of weakness. And for years, whether it was college or even when I went on to law school, again, I still didn't really understand what I was going through. All I knew was that every few months, I'd hit this terrible funk, and I'd have an incredibly difficult time getting myself to even walk out the door of my apartment or my dorm room, to go to class, to talk to people. I just literally had no energy or desire to do anything. And if it wasn't for the fact that I had a very, very good, very close friend who has experienced mental health issues his entire life, and who was attentive enough and caring enough to talk to me about this issue. And I can tell you it was a difficult conversation when he first brought it up, and it was painful, and there were a lot of difficult questions that I had to ask myself and confront. But at the end of the day, I recognize now that if it wasn't for that conversation, if it wasn't for my friend who was willing to reach out and talk to me, then I wouldn't be where I am today. And I can tell you the difference is night and day. Now I understand that there are situations I experience or times in my life where I do have problems with having the energy to go out. Sometimes I do face these feelings of anxiety where for no reason I'm afraid or apprehensive about confronting the world or going out and facing the day. But having understood that and now being able to talk about that, and having sought help through therapy and through talking with other people who have gone through these same experiences, I now realize that I'm not alone. And I realize that these are experiences that a lot of people have faced. And I realize that there's something that I can deal with and that I can face up to these challenges. And that to have a mental health issue, to say that I experience depression and that I suffer from and struggle with anxiety, is to say nothing about who I am as a person or about the quality of me as a person. And it doesn't say that I'm a weak or a failure. And I can tell you for many, many years, one of the biggest reasons it was difficult for me to really think about these issues was because of that fear. That sense that if I said something, that I would be laughed at or ridiculed, or worse, that I would be seen as a deeply flawed person, that all the successes that I had accomplished in my life, everything from being the first Asian American judge in Austin, Texas, to graduating with honors from one of the top law schools in the country, to being appointed to work in President Obama's administration. All of these achievements to me were simply a facade. And I was afraid that if I were to admit to myself even, much less to other people, that I was suffering from depression and anxiety, that all of these things would come tumbling down around me, and that I would not realize, that I would, suddenly people would realize that I was a fake, that I was a failure, that I was a fraud. And those thoughts scared me. I mean, they scared me to death in those moments. But what was the worst part about it was that I didn't think there was anybody I could say this to, anybody who could understand if I tried to explain what was going through. If only I had known what I know now, that I had friends all around me who had gone through the same thing, who had families or friends who had gone through the same thing, and that other people who were also Asian American, who faced the pressures of living up to the model minority stereotype, who faced the desire to make sure that their parents' sacrifices, everything that they've done for you to succeed, that would not be for nothing. And as Asian Americans, I think that we should understand most of all that we are not alone, and that whatever struggles that you experience or you're going through, that there is somebody out there who has gone through that exact same thing and who is willing to listen and who wants to talk to you. So I'm here today to tell my story so that hopefully you won't have to go through the same thing that I did, and that hopefully you will be able to talk to somebody as soon as you realize that something might be wrong or something might be off. Or perhaps it's a friend of yours or a family member or a loved one that you see is going through some kind of struggle or is having difficulty and maybe is afraid to say something or doesn't know how to talk to somebody about it. So please remember, friends do make a difference, and that when it comes to the Asian American Pacific Islander community, our mental health should be a priority.